I'm married, been married for 24 years, and I love being married. But I do know that someone who finds themselves in a place of singleness, you have such advantage right now. And I say advantage is to have that time of preparedness, to have time to heal, time to think about the things that you want and what you're going to do to get those things. Because when we talk about making room for love, the other question I have is, what is love going to find when it finds you? Hello, and welcome to another amazing episode of TMC, where we are here to help you take your relationships from surviving to thriving. Today on TMC, we will be discussing making room for love.
You know, it's so interesting. Here we are in 2023. Yay, 2023. Yes, we made it another year. I personally don't do New Year's resolutions, but I know a lot of people do. But I think beyond just doing New Year's resolution is that to be intentional about the things we want to see happen in our lives. And we can say a lot of things, especially in the areas of relationship, but I think we have to be intentional about making space for the things that we want. So like if I wanted a new TV and wanted to upsize my TV, I wouldn't just say, okay, I want to go get an 80-inch TV, but don't have room for it. Or a lot what we see if you're watching the makeover shows, where I've seen a few to where they were like, we don't know if the refrigerator's going to fit or some piece of furniture is going to fit in the door because they didn't measure, they were not intentional. So you have to make room. I think the same thing applies to love, and that for those of us who are saying that we desire marriage or we desire this committed relationship, is that we have to have space. We have to make space for that. I tend to watch a lot of reality TV shows. And so I've been watching Restaurant Impossible, but the other one that I love is Hoarders. And so one of the things about Hoarders, y'all know what happened in Hoarders, right?
Oh, yeah.
There's no room for anything. They just, there's too much stuff.
Yeah.
And some stuff is unnecessary. Some things have never been used. I saw one episode, she had shoes galore. And this is not a ding on anybody. But the lady had literally piles and piles like of shoes, a room full of shoes. And a lot of them were never worn.
Wow.
Some of them didn't have a purpose that she could actually wear. So it just got me to think is that we have to be intentional about making room. You know, a lot of times we say spring cleaning.
Yeah. And I think, even talking about making room, it's really interesting because oftentimes being single and going from single to married is two different lifestyles. Because when you're single, I don't have to share anything. I don't have to share the remote. I don't have to tell anyone, let someone know, hey, I'm going to be late home tonight or whatever, all those different things. So, this really makes sense. And making room, because sometimes we get into relationships or been hitting a lot on social media right now. So we prepare more for the wedding than the actual marriage. And so really like getting prepared as a spouse. I love this topic, making room.
Absolutely. I think it's a great topic. And as you were talking, Jamila, I was thinking about how a lot of times in life, we are not intentional about making room for what we are expecting. For instance, if we're single, we're expecting a relationship or expecting to be married. You talked about a TV. Even if you're expecting new furniture, you have to move the old furniture out the way. You move the old furniture, you clean up, you measure, you do all of these things. So there's a preparedness that has to take place before those things come. It was funny that you said about how on the HGTV shows or the home shows, they don't prepare, because we bought a refrigerator and I just picked the refrigerator and the guy came delivered and he's like,
it's a little upset.
He said, who measured it? And I was like, what? I bought the refrigerator.
They're taking the part to bring it in.
Take every piece apart to push it in the door. And as you were talking, I thought about that. He had to take the drawers out. He had to take the doors off. The hinge, it had to be flat for him to push it through our front door. And I'm like, note to self, if we have to move this refrigerator. So, but thinking about that as far as in life, we do that. There's no time for preparing properly for what we're expecting.
Yeah. I think you used the analogy of the refrigerator, and that just really got me to thinking like, oh, wow, how many times do we want something, we don't prepare for it, we don't know the ramifications, and then it makes additional work. That's what really came to me. It's like, man, there's some additional work when we don't prepare.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, we've talked about it so much, is that the gift of singleness is time.
Yes.
That we have the gift of time to prepare so that somebody won't get mad.
Yeah.
They come, the thing that we're expecting, the thing that we want.
Right.
And then there's this extra work for it. And then, like you said, if I ever need to move it around or something like that, it's like a note to self.
Yeah, there's a note there that there's going to be some extra work. I love the way you said that, because we don't think about in regards to relationship, we don't think about that if I don't prepare before, then there is going to be extra work. And I think a lot of times we're not taught that either. So it's good for those that hear this podcast and so many others that are telling us that. I really, really think I'm been married for 24 years, and I love being married, but I do know that someone who finds themselves in a place of singleness, you have such advantage right now. And I say advantage is to have that time of preparedness, to have time to heal, time to think about the things that you want and what are you going to do to get those things. Because when we talk about making room for love, the other question I have is, what is love going to find when it finds you? So when you're making room for love, what is it going to find when it finds you? Because you want a life that's full, but not so full to the fact that the other person can't even see themselves even being a part of it.
That's true.
And there's no need for you, because we've had that era of, I'm a strong woman, I could do it all by myself, and that's fine. But is that type of attitude going to be attractive for what you desire?
Yeah. And man, going back to your refrigerator analogy, I love that. What is love going to find when it comes knocking at your door? And I think we have to go back to what made the delivery guy so mad at you.
Yeah.
It was the access.
Exactly.
Because I recently shared with a counselor that, about marriage. And she said, are you really ready to let someone have access to? And she was asking me some hard, challenging questions. And at first I got a little upset. Like, you should be happy. Like, I'm to this point. But she was like, she just started to bring out different parts about access. And that's what the problem was. It wasn't the refrigerator.
Oh, no.
So it's not the thing of love itself. It wasn't, but it was the access. It was the door. And I was like, man, that was just the beginning part. What if you got to he put the refrigerator in the plug, the wattage wasn't, I'm not an electrician, so,
But you're on it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But I did that when I moved recently, and the plug.
The wrong plug.
Yeah, it's my dryer.
Yeah.
But I ended up having to buy an adapter because they were like, you can switch out the cords. I said, that's not my skill set.
Yeah.
But we have to be willing, because I was like, man, if I would have known, I didn't know if I would have prepared, because it took like a week or something for me to find the right one. I couldn't wash for a week.
Yeah.
It was delayed. So I think that's really key about access and preparing.
First thing I really would think is that you take time. And when we say time for the single person, the benefit of time is to unpack the things that you may have been carrying. Even as a married woman, in the last 2 years, I've learned things about myself that I never knew I was carrying. So there was areas that you, as my husband, may not have had access to because I didn't even know I was carrying it. But in that time of preparation, Jamila, you always share and talk about counseling and coaching in your preparedness and your time of working on self, that space you have to unpack some of the things that you're carrying, time to heal from past relationships, time to heal, even if it wasn't a romantic relationship, your parental relationship, you might need time to heal from the lack of whatever parenting, whether it was mom, dad, whoever. But I think that time, that access is healing. So when I think of him taking things off that refrigerator, he was clearing the way for that refrigerator to come through the door. The door didn't change, but the refrigerator had to change its form to come in. And that's the way I would think of it. In your time of singleness, it's the best time to change that form to be able to go through wherever the access is. Working on unpacking things. And it's not like, I'm not saying you're going to have everything together 100%, but definitely beginning to take off the layers for yourself.
Yeah, because healing is a journey. It's not a destination.
Oh yeah, continuum.
Yeah, because I think for me, there's a physical access because I have a lot of quiet time. And that's what my counselor brought out. She's like, you're used to your quiet time. And I am. And so it's having somebody physically in your space. And that's a physical change. And doing life with someone, how does that look?
Absolutely.
You know, that's different. Like you said, somebody's going to be with you and be like, okay, I'm finna run here. I can hop up and travel places at the drop of a dime. It's like that changes because the responsibility is now shared between my husband and I. And so it looks different. The other thing I think too is that mindset. I think before you can even prepare for any type of access change, you have to have your mind right. You know how they always say, get your mind right. You have to have that mind right of understanding the purpose of love. And I think that to me, before we get to, the other parts, is that we have to understand the purpose of love. You have to understand the purpose of this relationship. Why am I having this marriage at this particular time? Because without understanding the purpose of anything, abuse is inevitable. And that's Dr. Miles Monroe. And I so 1,000% agree with that.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So first, we're talking about having access. So having access to the individual, breaking down those walls and, getting the healing process. So one of the first A's is access. So let's go from access to assistance, because you mentioned something and you said something about and someone that you're working with,
I love
to help you see that. So first thing you want to do, you want to make sure you have the access, somebody to have access to you, and you're willing to give up the access, and whatever keeping you from that access point, that's where the healing take place. So we're going from access to assistance. So let's talk about that, because assistance is very important, because we're taught, especially, I have to say my era, being a Black man, coming from a Black family, this is really big in the Black community, is not getting help, it's really normal for us not to get help. The younger generation, maybe 25 and below, as of 2023,
are open to it.
But when I was coming up, something wrong with that. It had to be really, really bad, bad, in order for you to get some assistance. But I'm realizing that assistance is good. It's something that we need, because someone can help you through something that you can't see, really dealing with those blind spots in our lives, because that's the things in our lives that's keeping us from becoming the best who God has called us to be, reaching our greatest potential because of those blind spots. And I think getting somebody to assist us with those blind spots, and this is what makes sense. I'm a pastor, but this is what it makes sense in everything else. In the sports world, from the beginning of ages in the sports world, this has been going on forever. You have some of the greatest basketball players and football players and baseball players. They have all these different coaches to make them reach their greatest potential in every area. And that's what makes them the GOAT in what they do. We want to make some GOATs in relationships. The greatest of all time husband, and the greatest of all time wife, the greatest of all time mothers, and the greatest of all time fathers, and whatever else that we can name in our lives that's connected to us is having some GOATs. And so you have to get assistance in order to become the GOAT.
We've been married too long. Not too long, just kidding, forever. But just snatch my thought out of my head, because I was thinking, I'm thinking even the greatest basketball players, football players, they have teammates to assist them. Right. They have coaches, they have help, they have people to massage them, to help stretch their muscles. They have so much help so that they can perform to the best of their ability. And a lot of times we miss it because of the stigma of getting help. If you're in a relationship and it's not working or something is going on, get help before you. That's the greatest advantage, to get that assistance, that help, somebody to see the blind areas and point them out to you. Hey, let's check what's that around that corner right there. Let's check that. Someone to be able to do that for you before you enter into marriage and enter into that type of commitment. That's great. So I definitely encourage everyone to get some assistance, a coach, a counselor, what therapist, whatever it is that you need that'll work for you. get it and get someone to help you unpack those things. Because even though I share the things that I've been unpacking about myself, I haven't done it by myself because I'm talking to my husband, I'm talking to women, I'm talking to friends, and we're talking. And then I now have these questions to ask myself. Why do you feel that way? Why does this make you feel like that? And when I start to do that, then it's like, oh, that's reaching back to that little girl that, was disappointed. That's reaching back to that letdown or whatever. And now you're able to see these things so that you're able to keep moving forward in life. So definitely a coach, a counselor, a therapist, everyone that can assist you, the right people to assist you, because everyone can't assist you. Everybody can't help carry what you have to carry, and everybody can't carry your information. So you have to make sure that you're choosing the right people.
That is so true, because Cedric, you got us on this A team. We on the A team today. It's adjustment.
Ooh.
So you can have the access, you can have the assistance, but there's some adjustment that has to be. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love it.
Wow. So adjustments, because this is so important in a relationship, when going from singleness to being married, I mean, there are some serious adjustments that has to happen. You have to make those adjustments. You have to make those adjustments because you can't do it the way you did it at first. Now you have to share a bed. Now you have to share, if that's your preference. I mean, that's our preference, sharing the bank account. But you have to share. You have to begin to share things. And you have to learn things because you have two different people coming from two different backgrounds. So we have to make adjustments to make this thing work for us. Because, okay, my family did it like this. Your family did it like this. But somewhere down the line, we have to adjust. Because obviously every family is different. So we have to adjust to make what's going to work for our family. So there is adjustments.
Absolutely. And Jamila, that's great. When you said adjustments, it made me go back to thinking when you said about sharing your time and sharing your space. And sometimes I remember we had a couple on the podcast and she mentioned that she said, nobody told me I was going to have to share things because she was an only child. And no one told me that my husband's going to be using my lotion and stuff like that. And we laughed about it, but those things that we consider so small can take up so much space because then they become infuriating. And now I can't stand the fact that you always do. And and now it becomes something big because we haven't made the adjustments. The adjustment that like you said, I've been able to get up at the drop of a dime. Hey, I'm going on a 4-day weekend. Bye. See you. Now I have to discuss what's the plan, babe. Or even holidays. I go to my mom every Thanksgiving. Well, now you're in a relationship. He has family too. What's going to benefit your family now because you're creating a unit? So there's a lot of adjustments that are going to happen, and some we don't think about, some we don't talk about. Whether that person has children already, whether they've been married before, whatever the situation is, there's going to be lots of adjustments that need to be made, and we have to be willing to make those adjustments in order for us to move forward.
And speaking of those adjustments, that's what gets us to our next A, which is acceptance. You really have to accept the fact that I have to adjust. When I put something in the refrigerator, when I put the food in the refrigerator, it may get eaten by someone else. So you have to adjust to the fact that my favorite chips, may get eaten up by someone else. So
shade.
It's a little shade. But you have to adjust to that. That's you have to adjust to that because if you don't adjust, you will create frustration and friction in the relationship, and that's what we don't want. So. Because all of us have those pet peeves. And when you realize your pet peeves, you have to be able to adjust that and say, what, maybe, this is how I want. I need to shift some things. I need to shift my perspective. Because at the end of the day, because Shante and I are the same way. Most people don't know this about me. Listen, confessing right now, I am that individual that will throw shoes in the closet, right? In the beginning of our relationship, Shanta's dress. I mean, she got the blues, the reds. I mean, it fades from the purple to the blues, on and so forth. I mean, very, very, very creative. I mean, I say that she tried to get me involved in it. I'm like,
he's like, don't do my shirts like that.
Like, we have to come to a point of relationship. It was so crazy about it. We really never even really talked about it. Had this conversation prior to right now. But what happened, we adjusted to it. Like, okay. She basically said, you know what? It is what it is. Because at the end of the day, if we start focusing on little small things like that, those little small pet peeves, you have to realize, like, man, is this worth my relationship? Is it really that bad? Is he really that bad, or she really that bad because she do this, or he's really that bad because he do that? We have to really consider, because oftentimes this is what we do as human beings. I've done so much coaching and marriages, and a lot of times marriages, the people are upset about little petty stuff that doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
Just a little small stuff, and they just piled up in a little pile, and now it look like junk because that's what we're focusing on. But there's so much beauty, and trying to get everybody to see the beauty in the relationship instead of this small pile in the room. And we're focusing on that.
Absolutely.
Well, that's when you go and you make up in your heart and your mind that you value the relationship more than this particular little piece and segment over here. And what I would say is that I'm about to age myself, but there was a movie growing up called Mommy Dearest. No wire. And so that we won't have those moments to where you see one wire hangers and it just shoot you off the deep end. And so it's what is so true is, how am I going to direct my energies? Is this something that I'm really worth fighting for? And then the thing is that the acceptance of, this is how this person may be. How can I adjust me? Or is there room for this person to grow? Can we have a conversation about it? That's when you use your tools that you have in your toolbox to have those critical conversations, crucial conversations, and can handle conflict. And so, but there is an adjustment, there's acceptance, there's access, and it all goes together. Because one of the things I've seen growing up, and I think Cedric and I are in the same era, is that, it was figure it out, and there's nothing wrong with figuring it out, but I love what you said, Sean, but I didn't have to figure it out by myself.
Yeah. Because as Cedric was talking, and he was mentioning about the closet and how I am like that, but I started to think about the other things, because even in the beginning of our marriage, and we've shared this on TMC before, the financial part, I was completely I'm like, pay the bills, spend all the rest. And Cedric's like a saver. So though we were totally different on those things. And I had to adjust, because to me, in my mind, the way I let it go in my mind is like, oh, you're saying I don't know what I'm doing, or you're trying to control what I'm doing, or whatever. But I had to make adjustments in order for us to have financial freedom and to grow. So there's a lot of areas where this adjustment may need to take place in order for a relationship to thrive and flourish. And we have to be willing as individuals, because it took me a long time, but I did come to grips with where I needed to adjust for our financial stability. So even though, for him, it's like the closet is like, and that's what I wanted to point out, because that's two different things. So in that relationship, an adjustment for the closet is like, okay, that's a preference. That's my preference, that his side would be colorful, coordinated, just like mine, because I use the color wheel to coordinate. But that's not gonna work for him. So let him just throw them shoes over there. But then when it comes to the finances, it's not no, okay, that's just how she is. No, because then that's a detriment to us. So Sean has to adjust the way she does things, but it's all in line to us. And I had to accept the fact that I was the one that needed to adjust in that area. So I think, this is awesome. I love it. Absolutely.
One of the things I would say about all the things that we're saying, especially with adjusting and acceptance, is not a linear process.
Oh, no.
Because there are some things I may accept that later on I might have to go adjust. There's some things I might adjust, then I can accept it. So it's not like step one. It's not it's fluid. It's flowing.
Absolutely. And per person, per couple, because what's fluid and works for us, the other person might not work for them. But you have to, again, you still going to be adjusted. Oh yeah.
It's powerful. It is so powerful, because the reality is this. I moved to a different state last year. And one of the things that I learned, someone told me this, and I've experienced it. Moving is a process, not an event. Marriage is a process, not an event.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Not an event.
Absolutely.
And I think what we've seen in the past is the focus on the event, i.e. the wedding.
The wedding.
But the marriage is a process. It's a living organism that all these things you get to do. And that's why it's cyclical. That's why it's fluid. That's why, because it's living. Your marriage is living. So I love what you're saying, is that you don't want your blind spots to hinder you from being the GOAT.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Another way you can become the GOAT, become the best, become the greatest, reach your greatest potential, you have to constantly go through these giving the access and the assistance and the adjustments and the acceptance and doing it over and over and over again.
Yes.
Awesome.
Making room for love.
That's it.
So our testimony and our story is that when love comes, love was able to enter in and dwell
Absolutely.
and flourish and not only just survive,
But thrive.
thrive.
Yes, I love it.
Absolutely. Thank you. So we want to thank each and every one of you for joining us on today. And if this is your first time joining us, go ahead and subscribe right here. Hit that like button underneath, and we will be greatly appreciated in helping getting out this content to great people like yourself. And if you listen on iTunes, please rate the podcast and leave a review. That helps us get the word out. So we want to thank you for joining us today on TMC. Looking forward to hanging out with you again on next week as we continue to help you take your relationship from
Surviving to thriving. Bye. See you next week.